People of Reddit. What's an interesting, creepy topic to look into? Story one, I forgot what they called it, but many people, when riding in a car, entertain their brain by imagining they run alongside it, more often when they are younger. I used to use my two fingers and imagine them jumping from sign to sign, and if there was nothing to jump to, I'd run along the car until I could jump to the next sign or post along the road. My sister said she would pretend to have a pink ribbon running alongside the car and would decorate with the ribbon as she went. So, this phenomenon is one that no one acknowledges or talks about but can't explain. It could be written off as just coincidence, but the specifics are too common, and it's something that is not taught in any way. So, you may ask, that isn't creepy. You'd be right, except for the thread I came across had one truly specific similarity. An overwhelming mass of people had experienced what I just explained, but experienced seeing one specific thing: a pitch black creature with claws and fangs and horns running parallel to the vehicle they would be looking out of. The people in the thread described it in more or less detail, some having a clearer remembrance of it, while others had a foggier memory. The two most shared traits were a black, dark creature with horns and claws. This creature was something they claimed to consciously imagine, although it came almost automatically, just as my running with my fingers was almost OCD, like a muscle memory. I also used my feet to pretend to run and jump when I got a bit older instead of fingers. I still do this, even when driving. Story 2. If you're an existentialist, cosmic horror. It's not like a creepy murder or peculiar event. It's just the idea that we really do live in an infinite, uncaring, apathetic, and amoral universe, and we put ourselves on this pedestal of, well, my life matters, and the universe just sort of doesn't care. It's what makes the thing an alien just really creepy, beyond gross bugs from space. Now, let me be clear. This isn't me saying, oh, go read Lovecraft. No. Good conduit. But not this comment. Look up some facts about exploration, space, and fundamental concepts like the atom in life just starts freaking you out. Story 3. I wish I could remember the name of the facility, but when I was in college, we watched a documentary on a recent, let's say 2009-ish, disabled facility that had been closed down due to abuse. I want to say the facility was located in Russia. The footage was just creepy and sickening. There was a case where a kid was put in the facility because he had a mild disability, and he was 18 years old, and had laid in the same bed for so long, he actually became cemented to the bed, and they had to cut him out of the bed. He had the brain and body development of the average 3-year-old. He had an adult face on a baby-looking body. Yeah, I like climbing Mount Everest, sounds cool and all, but let's talk about the fact that it's literally a graveyard up there. People are out here risking it all for a photo op, while Mother Nature just shakes her head. It's wild how these adventures can go super wrong. And the harsh truth is, it's not just a mountain, it's a killer. If anyone's thinking about tackling Everest, maybe just stick to hiking up the stairs. It's a lot safer, and you can still get a decent workout in. Story 4. Yo, let me tell you about this wild event called the Nazino Affair, also known as Cannibal Island. So, back in the 1930s, some high-ups in the USSR had this crazy idea to run a collectivization test on a deserted island. They went and rounded up around 6,000 folks, mostly city dwellers, who were just snatched up randomly, and dumped them on this barren island with barely any food, supplies, or shelter. To make things worse, they had guards all around the place, telling them to shoot anyone who tried to bounce. In less than 3 months, about 2/3 of the people on that island were gone. The ones who made it through ended up eating the deceased, and there are some pretty wild stories about them even doing some serious stuff to those who were still alive. Eventually, they decided this whole experiment was a flop and moved the survivors off the island. After that, they pretty much buried all the records about it until the 80s rolled around. Story 5. NASA's been picking up radio signals from all the planets in our solar system, kind of like giving each one its own soundtrack. And guess what? Saturn's got some wild screams going on. Story 6, cornflakes. The dude who came up with cornflakes made them super plain and unexciting to keep folks from getting all riled up and, doing the deed or whatever. He also ran a health clinic and used some harsh stuff on little girls to make sure they wouldn't enjoy anything related to intimacy. And for boys, he had these wires that would zap them whenever they got a boner. making it hurt. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. He had some pretty wild ideas. So, first off, the whole let's make breakfast bland to curb the time idea is just next level. Like, I have no idea how cornflakes relate to human reproductivity, but here we are. It's insane how someone thought pouring milk over dry, tasteless nuggets would save the world from all the teenage hormone drama. And then there's the whole bugging out with carbolic acid and torture devices. That's some straight up horror movie stuff. Like, is this a serial or a psychological thriller? Someone should have told this guy that maybe a trip to the cereal aisle would do him more good than running a sanitarium. Story 7, room 1046, is a really spooky unsolved mystery. So, there was this guy who got seriously hurt in his hotel room after chilling there by himself in the dark all day long. Mix in some weird phone calls and odd stuff going on, and you've got yourself a pretty wild story. Story 8. The wife of the Scientology leader hasn't been spotted in over a decade. The big shots in the organization say she's just super focused on the church, but since she had that major blowout with her husband 10 years ago, her family hasn't heard from her at all. That definitely raises some eyebrows. Story 9 cults. It's super easy to feel like you're too savvy to get caught up in their mind tricks. But the more you dig into it, the more you see that we all have soft spots that can be taken advantage of. Cults really have a way of showcasing how quickly things can spiral out of control, huh? It's like one minute you're just trying to find your place in the world, and the next you're sipping some mystery Kool-Aid while wearing matching pajamas. Honestly, it's wild how they can exploit those vulnerabilities we all have. Like, who knew my love for community and free snacks could lead me to a doomsday cult? Gotta respect the hustle, I guess. Just not the whole mind control part. Stay safe out there, folks, and maybe stick to regular clubs or, I don't know, knitting circles. Story 10. Operation Paperclip. The deliberate and secret effort to scoop up German scientists at the end of World War II, bring them to the US under new identities through other countries, and put them to work in sensitive positions in government research, including NASA and the CIA. Seriously creepy crap. Of course, anything the Dulles brothers did back then was pretty damn creepy. John Foster Dulles has got to be high in the running for worst human of the recent era. So, I've known about paperclips forever, but recently, watching Trump take the presidency and all the crap with cops and generally living in an American nightmare, I started wondering what became of all the Germans' non scientific knowledge, like their social sciences and theories about management and bureaucracy and all their various schemes. Did the US government also take that stuff and incorporate it into its domestic and foreign policies? Story 10, Operation Paperclip. The deliberate and secret effort to scoop up German scientists at the end of World War II, bring them to the US under new identities through other countries, and put them to work in sensitive positions in government research, including NASA and the CIA. Seriously creepy crap. Of course, anything the Dulles brothers did back then was pretty damn creepy. John Foster Dulles has got to be high in the running for worst human of the recent era. So I've known about paperclips forever, but recently, watching Trump take the presidency and all the crap with cops and generally living in an American nightmare, I started wondering what became of all the Germans' non scientific knowledge, like their social sciences and theories about management and bureaucracy and all their various schemes. Did the US government also take that stuff and incorporate it into its domestic and foreign policies? Story 11. Brain tumors that cause severe changes to personality. When Charles Whitman, the University of Texas tower shooter, was killed and autopsied, they found a tumor in his brain right by the amygdala, aka the anger center of the brain. This tumor is suspected to be the cause of the violent tendencies he experienced right before the shooting. It's so freaky to think that your brain can change in such a way that it turns you into a completely different person. Story 12. So, there was this Redditor who, when she was younger, went camping with her mom. They were hanging out when some guys in a truck pulled up nearby. Later that night, she got woken up by her mom, who was sitting up in the tent, signaling her to be super quiet. They could hear those dudes getting closer to their tent. Her mom had some quick thinking and shouted, "Tommy, grab the piece," even though it was just the two of them. The guys ended up bailing after hearing that. I can't even imagine what kind of trouble they dodged that night. Story 13. Elon School. So, this place was kind of like a fake cult mixed with a wild Stanford prison experiment vibe, all wrapped up in what they claim was a school for fixing behavior problems. There's a webcomic by a person who got out of there. I'd totally share it, but I'm on my work break right now. It's closed now, but it flew under the radar for ages. If I remember right, a couple of folks even passed away because of the extreme treatment they faced there. Story 14. For sure, it's the story about that dude who got stuck upside down in Nutty Putty Cave and couldn't be saved because they would have had to break his legs to get him out. I never thought an infographic could give me the chills, but here we are. Story 15. I love scrolling through those threads where folks on Reddit share their creepiest experiences, whether it's spotting something that totally shouldn't be there or nearly getting caught up in a real life scare. It's just wild and spooky to dive into people's firsthand stories of fear. Creepy moments, huh? Honestly, I'm here for the spooky vibes, but some of these stories could double as horror movie scripts. Like, who decided to go into a haunted house alone? That's a solid lawsuit waiting to happen. But hey, if you want to give me nightmares for the next week, keep those stories coming. It's like reality's way of saying, you thought you were safe? Nah. Story 16. The Zhejiang Jiangxi campaign was all about the Japanese getting back to the US for the Doolittle raid. Here's a little summary from Wikipedia. After the raid went down, the Japanese Imperial Army kicked off the Zhejiang Jiangxi campaign, also known as Operation Seigo, to stop those eastern coastal areas of China from being used for future attacks on Japan and to take revenge on the Chinese people. They completely wrecked around 20,000 square miles, 50,000 kilometers squared. Eyewitness Father Wendelin Dunker described it like this. They swarmed in like locusts, leaving nothing but wreckage and mayhem. The Japanese took out about 10,000 Chinese civilians while hunting for Doolittle's crew. Anyone who helped the airmen faced some serious torture before they were done away with. Father Dunker mentioned the devastation in the town of Iwang. They shot basically anything that moved. They violated women from ages 10 to 65. And before setting the town ablaze, they looted it thoroughly. None of the bodies were buried either. The Japanese rolled into Nanchung with a population of 50,000 on June 11th, starting a wave of terror so terrible that missionaries later called it the destruction of Nanchung, which brought back memories of the notorious destruction of Nanjing that happened 5 years earlier. Less than a month later, Japanese forces burned what was left of the city. This planned burning went on for 3 days, one Chinese newspaper reported, turning Nanjing into scorched earth. Story 17. The real-life story that inspired the song The Way by Fastball. So it's all about Layla and Raymond Howard, an elderly couple from Texas in their 80s. They were looking forward to hitting up a festival they attended every year, just 15 miles away from their place. But both of them were dealing with some pretty serious mental decline. That morning, they just took off without telling a soul. They never made it back home. 3 days later, they got pulled over 500 miles from their house. Not once, but twice. Neither of the cops knew they were reported missing at that point. They got let go with just a warning, even though Layla couldn't remember where she lived. The search picked up steam, with authorities in various states on the lookout, and it even hit national news. Tips flooded in, but none led to finding them. The early buzz about their situation inspired the song, and it was actually written before they were found. Eventually, some hikers stumbled upon Layla and Raymond a couple of weeks later. Their car was at the bottom of a 25-foot cliff. Sadly, Raymond had passed away in the passenger seat, and Layla was found not too far from the car, holding her purse and keys. It looked like she opened the passenger door for her husband, before crawling away and succumbing to her injuries. The car had flown off the cliff at around 50 miles per hour, and there were no skid marks, meaning she probably didn't even see the edge or got really confused and just went right off. Story 18. Crazy tests done by different armies and governments on people. So, human experimentation by governments? Classic overreach, right? Like, who thought that was a good idea? I can practically hear the let's see what happens if we poke this bear mentality echoing around the conference room. Gotta love how some people are just like, let's put ethics on hold and see what happens. Honestly, it's like a horror movie plot, but somehow way less entertaining. Story 19 is Issei Sagawa. A rich dude from Japan ends up taking the life of a French woman in France, then does some really messed up stuff. He gets let go after being declared legally insane and goes on to make a name for himself back in Japan. cashing in on his crime. He's into writing, art, and is basically a celebrity over there. It definitely highlights a pretty dark side of Japanese culture. Story 20. The Bjork Stalker. Ricardo Lopez was an exterminator, with aspirations of being a famous artist one day. He was very reclusive, insecure, and lonely. He retreated into a fantasy world and became fascinated with the lives of celebrities, particularly the Icelandic singer Bjork. His fascination soon grew into an obsession, and he began stalking her. Upon finding out that Bjork was engaged to an African American celebrity by the name of Goldie, he became enraged about one, the fact that she was engaged, and two, that her fiancé was a black man. He decided it was his mission to end her or cause her some kind of physical and emotional harm as punishment. He began constructing a homemade acid bomb that he would mail to her house in London to disfigure or end the singer. He also planned to end his life with the belief that he would meet Bjork in heaven, where they could both be happy. Lopez recorded his entire plan to end Bjork and his motivations with a video camera, and you can find the videos on YouTube. If you watch them, you can actually witness his mental deterioration and descent into insanity. Lopez sent the acid bomb to Bjork's house and then recorded himself shaving his head, painting his face red and green, and then taking his life. His final words being, "This is for you." Fortunately, the police investigated Lopez's apartment soon after his passing, and the FBI got involved. The package was intercepted by British authorities, and the bomb was safely detonated in an isolated location. Bjork is fortunately still alive and well. Story 21, Cambrian Vibes. Back in the day, 541 to 485 million years ago, most critters looked totally wild compared to what we see today. Check out the Tully monster. It's got paleobiologists arguing whether it's a vertebrate or not. Some think it's kind of related to lampreys. Then there's Opabinia, which has 5 eyes and looks like a lobster in a vacuum. And let's not forget Anomalocaris, this chitin-covered beast that was basically a floating horror that showed up to munch on all the tiny animals around. Oh, and Pacaya, this little wormy dude, is actually one of our distant ancestors. There are always new discoveries popping up, and scientists are constantly changing their theories to keep up with the latest mystery creatures. They don't always get the media love like dinosaurs do, but Cambrian life is just as awesome. Story 22. It had a name which I forgot, but there's an obscure Russian radio station that you can still access with the right antenna and frequency. It plays a repeated beeping nonstop 24/7, and it's been active for about 30 years. People have heard Russian music playing in the background and people arguing in Russian. So it's a broadcast of a room audio somewhere. It takes serious high-grade military crap to broadcast a signal this strong for so long. There's a theory that the Soviets created the station for people to tune into during the Cold War. And if the beeping stopped, it meant Russia was compromised, blown up by nukes. Story 23. I'd say Gertrude Baniszewski is totally responsible for the murder of Sylvia Likens, but I'm not sure interesting is the right word. More like super disturbing and really heartbreaking. So, just a heads up, the flick The Girl Next Door, the 2007 horror one, not the 2004 comedy, is actually based on this tragic case. Gertrude kept Sylvia locked up in the basement, and along with her daughter, her son, and a few kids from the neighborhood, they basically tortured Sylvia to death over several months. Gertrude and her older daughter got life in prison, while the kids were handed sentences from 2 to 21 years. What really gets me is that Gertrude was eventually let out on parole, which, as someone who's studied law, though not criminal law, to keep it real, has always stuck with me as a big fail from our justice system. Gertrude lived another 5 years in totally unearned freedom before she passed away from lung cancer in 1990. Honestly, I can say with no regrets that I'm kind of glad she got dealt that hand. That story is about as dark as it gets, honestly. It's like horror movies try to tap into our fears, but then you read real life stuff and realize the actual world can be way more twisted. I mean, the fact that Gertrude and her little crew turned into literal monsters is just horrifying. It's one of those things that makes you question humanity, you know? Like, how do people even get to that point? The whole situation is just tragic and devastating. I get why they made a movie about it, but it kind of feels gross to glamorize something so horrifically real. Major chill vibes to Sylvia's story, though. It's just heartbreaking. Story 24. The bloop. Those massive deep-sea creatures and all the eerie sounds from the ocean depths. Even though a lot of these have been proven false, The thought of giant monsters roaming around down there is both wild and kind of terrifying. Story 25. I find researching human crushes pretty grim. A crush is not, in this case, the romantic thing in middle school. It's when a mass of people try to move together and wind up squishing and or trampling individuals against floors and walls and other things, resulting in grievous injuries at best, and death by blunt force or suffocation at worst. People are packed in so tight against one another that they are literally crushed. It's very disturbing to me. When we are afraid at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how evolved we are as a species. We are not immune to our instincts, and sometimes those instincts to flee can kill. Story 26. The Benders of Labatt, Kansas. This family of notorious killers was active in the mid to late 1800s, taking out travelers who stopped by their roadside inn. Story 27. Typically, it's all about those unclassified files on serial killers, their actions, and what drives them. I find it super interesting to peek into the minds of these apparently crazy folks and figure out why they're doing such wild stuff. This is a whole vibe, honestly. People are out here obsessed with true crime and dissecting the minds of serial killers like it's another episode of Murder Mysteries, the game show. I mean, sure, psychology is fascinating and all, but sometimes I feel like we're one step away from hosting a Guess the Serial Killer party. Like, you can't tell me that pulling apart the psyche of a deranged nut job has become normal convo. But hey, if it keeps you entertained and not actually in harm's way, I guess it's all good. Just remember, the next time you see someone celebrating their birthday with cake and confetti, they might be planning their own declassified documents event. Fun times in the world, right? Story 28, Lost Media. The idea that something was out there but got lost in the shuffle of time, or was never fully made in the first place, is kind of spooky and wild. It's like it's here one minute, then poof, gone forever, all because of some human mix-ups in keeping track. Sometimes we can't even tell if it was ever real, but hey, there's a bunch we do know. Little bits and pieces show up in short clips, screenshots, or even just through whispers from those in the know. Still, there's a solid chance we might never dig them up. But why not give it a shot, right? Lost media is like the ultimate what if scenario, right? It's that weird feeling you get when you realize there's something out there that might have been amazing or just completely bonkers. And all you have are some grainy screenshots that look like they came from a 2003 flip phone. Honestly, it's kind of like my last group project. Just a bunch of ideas that sounded cool but never saw the light of day. But for real, the mystery of it is kind of creepy. Imagine if the lost media was actually some treasure trove of the weirdest, most creative stuff. Like, let's be real, I'd binge watch whatever bizarre show never aired. There's a certain thrill in the thought that something might be out there, just chilling in the void, waiting for someone to uncover it. Story 29. Not weird, but pretty cool. D.B. Cooper, the one and only person to pull off a plane, hijacking, escape, and totally dodge getting caught. Story 30. The wild story of Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka in Canada is about a couple who committed 3 murders and a bunch of other horrible stuff. It's so sad. One of the girls' moms locked her out for being late, so Leslie tried to call a friend to crash at their place, but the friend's mom said no. That's when Paul Bernardo picked her up. Carla Homolka actually gave her little sister to Paul as a Christmas gift, and things went downhill from there when she used some tranquilizers she snagged from her job. Carla was all in on the chaos, but acted like she was the victim, and ended up getting just 12 years. And by the way, I'm super into anything about the Zodiac Killer. That stuff is so intriguing.